Okay. You ready? Let's do this. You're listening to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. This is the podcast that delves deep into the outdoors, will inspire, inform, and get you stoked to explore. And I'm your host, David Webb. Welcome to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. I'm your host, David Webb. Today, we're going to talk about a topic all Canadian outdoor enthusiasts are interested in, I promise you. Because today we're going to talk about bears. That's right, those beautiful, majestic creatures that roam the wilderness of virtually every outdoor area in the country, that are also apex predators, that also get habituated to human behavior, that are also often the source of fear, confusion, misinformation, and danger to people enjoying our outdoors. My guest today knows more about bear encounters than most. His name is Curtis Matwishyn, and he is from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. He's a wildland firefighter in the national parks, an outdoor photographer, and a lifetime outdoor enthusiast. He also had a very close encounter with a black bear last year, where he learned key elements on how to minimize impact, ward off a bear, and finish the encounter safely for all parties so it need not be escalated. Well, Curtis is going to share the story today. He's going to share what he learned, and we're going to talk about how we can minimize human-bear encounters and work on positive resolutions when they do happen. Oh, and of course, we're going to talk about bear spray and why it is so important that you always carry it while traveling in bear country. Ready for it? Let's get into the bear necessities with Curtis Matwishyn. Curtis, welcome to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Good. I'm happy to have you here. You've got some interesting stories to tell. But first off, I thought I might just let you introduce yourself to our listeners. Who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm Curtis Matwishyn. I'm a wildland firefighter and a nature photographer based out of Prince Albert National Park, Saskatchewan, Canada. Work for the parks here, so I'm lucky enough that I get to live in our park year-round, which is definitely good for wildlife and nature photography.
I love Prince Albert National Park. I was there last in 2018. So you live right in the town. I always get the pronunciation right. Waskesiu, right? Is it Waskesiu? Is that the name of the town? Or?
Waskesiu.
Waskesiu. Okay. Yeah. So you live right in the town then?
I do, yeah. There's staff housing here. So most cabins in the town site are actually only open for about 6 months of the year. But with staff of the park, they have year-round accommodations. So for a lot of the year, the cold part, I call it my own private national park. There's not a lot of visitors up here in the winter. So it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, I love my time up there, and the wildlife was incredible. I was up there in September, like late September, and it was so cool. We were just experiencing one day would have all seasons. It would snow, and then it'd be sunny, and then it'd be windy, and then it would get a little cloudy, and then it'd be snowing again, all in one day. But I do remember I stayed at the hotel there, the Haywood Inn.
Yeah, the Hallwood.
Yeah, Hallwood. Yeah. See, I can't get anything. I should have studied up on these, right? But one of the server described winter there as her favorite time as well. She said it was just cross country skiing right out her door, northern lights, nobody here.
Exactly.
It sounded really magical. So I totally hear what you're saying there.
Yeah, I call it a winter wonderland. It's great.
And so how long have you been there?
I've been here since 2019. So my wife and I both work for the parks here, and we started off in Banff actually for the national parks there. And we're from Prince Albert originally. So this is only an hour north of our hometown. So it was the perfect move for us. So this is the longest I've ever actually lived in one location since high school. So I guess this is, we're setting down some roots here.
Wildland firefighter. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started wildland firefighting back in 2011. I did a forestry diploma, and at that point I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I did a forest fire course in my education, and at that point I really didn't even know it was a job, but once I got a little bit educated on it, and my instructor had been a wildland firefighter as well, so I just became very interested in it. He helped me out with kind of getting me a fitness plan and showing me where to apply. And I got on with Alberta Wildfire back in 2011, and I was with them until 2018. And then I transferred over to Parks Canada, and that's where I'm at now. I'm a wildland fire crew leader here. So we have a 4-person initial attack crew, 2 of them in our park, and I'm one of the crew leaders here.
That's an amazing job, doing amazing work. So thank you for that. And you must be, so it's June of 2023 right now. You must be busy right now.
It has been a crazy fire year across Canada for sure. Us locally, we've been lucky enough that we actually haven't had any starts in our national park. We did go through a stretch of extreme fire danger in May. So we were on high alert and flying patrols every day, and we had a bit of lightning, but luckily it came with some rain, so nothing came of that. So yeah, we've been having to stick closer around here just because of our high fire hazard, but we
Mm-hmm.
have recently got some rain, so we're really hopeful that our crews will be able to get out and help out either in other parks. Wood Buffalo National Park is experiencing quite a few fires, and obviously Alberta, BC, Quebec is starting to go off, and Nova Scotia. It's just kind of all across the country. It's crazy fire season, and it's only started June, so definitely I
Yeah.
think is going to be a really busy one for us.
So you move around park to park as needed, though.
Yeah, that's one of the really cool things with the federal firefighting agency. We're the only
Mm-hmm.
federal agency; all the rest are provincial.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
we do have less crews than a lot of the agencies. So with that, we also have a bit less land than a lot of provinces. So we will lend each other helping hands. Like if we're in low or moderate fire hazard and there's something going on in Jasper, Banff, or any of the other parks across Canada, we'll go and help. So I was lucky enough to get out to help on the Ketamon wildfire in Jasper last fall. A lot of our crews are there. Currently, we have quite a few crews in Kootenay. They had to start a couple weeks ago. Luckily, they've been able to get a handle on that, so it hasn't been in the news or hasn't been a large fire. So lots of good work being done by our crews there. Yeah, so we're pretty lucky. We get to move across the country quite a bit, not just to other provincial agencies, but also to our different parks. So definitely a perk of the job for sure, getting to tour around all our beautiful national parks.
It's pretty dangerous work, right?
Yeah, it's more dangerous than say if you're working in an office or that type of
Yeah.
thing. But that's where training is really important. We'll
Mm-hmm.
get into the training piece, I'm sure, when we talk about my other
Mm-hmm.
experience with the bear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just knowing the hazards and really drilling in safety protocol that you follow at all times, no matter what. We try to make it as safe as we can. And in Canada here, we definitely try to not push the limit. Human life is number one, and the first responders' life is number one. If
Mm-hmm.
we get into trouble, it takes away resources for everything else. So we definitely act accordingly with that, and we try to be as safe as possible. So luckily, we have very few firefighter fatalities in Canada, and we're really hopeful that that continues down the road as we get into more intense wildfire seasons.
It was interesting. One of the things that stuck with me right when you were describing your entry into this career is that the first thing you said is someone got you on a fitness program. So what did that entail?
I've listened to a podcast called The Anchor Point, and they describe it as endurance athletes. So you're almost an athlete when you do this job, and it makes sense just to do our job effectively and to avoid injuries. You have to have a certain level of fitness, pass a fitness test. So for me, I actually wasn't super active growing up. Didn't play a lot of sports, so yeah, I wouldn't have been described as fit at that point. But just when I found out about the job and it was something I would really like to do, I had also been thinking I would like to get more fit, and this was kind of a good goal endpoint to work towards. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just really, it's a good mix of cardio is essential for sure. Like we're doing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
long, I call it a slow grind, is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our days on the fire line. You can burn up to 4,000, 6,000 calories in
Wow.
activity in like a 12 to 14-hour day on the line. But it's not a sprint. So a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of longer endurance training mixed with some anaerobic cardio and functional strength training. So a bit of it all. So for me, my main thing was just getting kind of a good baseline cardio with some strength training involved to be able to pass the fitness test. And I did. It was when I first did my fitness test, it was the most challenging thing I had ever done in my
Well,
life. And halfway through it, I thought maybe I wasn't going to make it, but I pulled through. And yeah, it's a good example of, and it makes you a lot of people, it's the most intense thing they've done. So you kind of dig deep and you're able to do
yeah.
something that you didn't think was possible before. So it helps build confidence too. And yeah, so it's definitely a big part of the job.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Honestly, I feel like we could do a second podcast with you and just talk about your career as a wildland firefighter.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd love
finding
to.
this so interesting. But you also are a nature photographer, and obviously you enjoy spending time outdoors. How did that come? Was that before you were a wildland firefighter all the time, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, so that would have been before my parents bought me a camera for my grade 12 graduation. It was, I believe, a Nikon Coolpix P80, so kind of a hybrid camera, not an SLR,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
SLR-like camera. And yeah, that really just got me into the medium of photography. So I started shooting with that. I've always been drawn to the outdoors. We live in a beautiful place here in Saskatchewan, lots of
Mm-hmm.
lakes, and we're Prince Albert's the boreal transition zone. So I come from a farm background, so we have beautiful
Okay.
rolling prairie hills. We
Hmm.
say the hills lightly. They're not that big, but it's still a rolling
I
landscape. It's
love
not
the
totally flat,
Saskatchewan
but
landscape. I love it. I love
yeah,
it there,
yeah,
particularly
for
in the
sure.
north. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's a bit more topography than most people think. We do have hills.
Hmm.
There's things
Hmm.
you'll get out of
Hmm.
breath going up them. But yeah, so that got me into it. My first year of university, I did an elective in photography. Uh, that one was funny. Kind of kicked my butt. I thought it was going to be a marks booster class because I thought I was a great photographer, but I really didn't know the fundamentals. It was a 35 mil black and white, and just
Oh
I
yeah.
used to just put my camera on sunset mode and it'd be a silhouette with bright
Yeah.
oversaturated colors, and I thought it was the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really brought me down to earth. But I went
Uh,
from getting, he was marking it as if you're a pro right at the start. So going from 50s in my first assignments up to 80s by the end, it really helped me develop as a photographer. And then I bought my first SLR and I've been shooting ever since. So
That's awesome, and that's so cool that you learned that film background, that real core fundamentals of photography. Because you're
mhm.
right. I mean, your cool pics from back in the day versus even now with phones and stuff like that. I mean, the automatic settings, like they're kind of dumbing it down a little bit. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so I always say like people talk to me about photography sometimes because working in the magazine, and they say like I want to get a good camera, and I would often say to them, I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want a camera that can take nice snapshots of your family while you're on vacation? You can share it with your friends. And they're like, yeah.
yeah,
I'm like, you already have that. It's already in your pocket. It's called your
yeah,
iPhone. Or do you want to learn the art of photography? And in that case, that's a bigger step. That is
for sure.
much bigger. And if you take out a DSLR, and you're used to using an iPhone, I'm like, your photography is going to go downhill. You're going to take worse pictures right out of the gate because you're not going
Yep.
to know how to use it properly. But if you take the time, they're going to be so much better. So that's really cool that you learn that film basis, because I don't like, I'm not a photographer per se, but like, out and about and working for the magazine, I do some photography, and I don't
Mhm.
have any film background at all, really. Like I mean, I used it a little bit in the start of my career just because that's what we were using, but I never had that foundation. That's really interesting. So you must have been developing film and everything, right?
We did the whole thing. We would develop our own film itself in the dark room, and then we would actually use the enlargers and make our prints. So just getting that whole process of what photographers used to have to do without the availability of digital really gave me a huge respect for photography and how
Oh
good
yeah.
we have it nowadays. Like there's a phrase called spray and pray that
Hmm.
people use sometimes, and that's just where basically you're just taking hundreds or thousands of photos when, and I'm guilty of it too, when something amazing's happening. I'm
Me too.
taking tons
Big
of
time.
photos. But with film, you have maximum 36 exposures
Mm.
on a roll of film, and you don't even know what it looks like when you're shooting. So
Hmm.
you really had to have your technique a lot more dialed than you do
Oh yeah.
today. It still definitely helps, obviously, like lots of times.
Hmm.
It's a fraction of a second to get the perfect shot. So
Hmm.
you could be a really great photographer and consistently make good images. You do need to practice lots and have that technique dialed. But yeah, it's funny. Like you said, people take amazing images on their iPhones, and a lot of it is be in the right place, right time,
Hmm.
proper lighting. Doesn't really matter your camera at that point because yeah, there
Hmm.
can be iPhone photos that definitely are better than a lot of my SLR photos that are thousands of
Hmm.
dollars of gear for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, same is
But
good
the
just to get the
upper but the
base.
upper echelon of the SLR is so much better. That's the thing. Like when you get to that
100%.
peak, it is just so much better. Like I mean, you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, I
Hmm.
would have wasted a lot of money. But
No,
yeah.
definitely not. So you're out not too long ago, sometime a while back, and
Mhm.
you would like to shoot wildlife with a camera. I should
Yeah.
clarify, you're in a national park most of the
Hmm.
time. Shoot it with a camera.
Yep.
And you encountered a particular animal. And you had an interesting encounter. I wonder if you could tell us about your encounter and what exactly happened there.
Yeah, for sure. So it was just like it was actually just about a year ago. It was May 30th of last year. So just as wildlife were really getting active just past the spring, and my wife and I and her dog had gone out for a hike. And whenever I'm out in the national park driving around, I always bring my camera. So went for a nice hike. We were driving back home, and I had already seen a few bears that spring. I'd photographed some at a location that they generally always are feeding on fish. So but my wife hadn't seen a bear yet that year, so it's always special when you see your first bear. So we were driving, and there's a certain meadow that we actually burn every year in our job. It's called the community fuel break. So we burn it for hazard reduction every spring. And I've always wanted to get a photo of a bear in this meadow. It's just a beautiful open meadow with a few trees. It was just kind of perfectly green after our burn. And now, for the first time, I finally saw a bear there. So we see it as driving by. And normally, when I'm shooting wildlife, especially from the car, it's best if you can just stay in the car. Safest for you, least disturbance for the animal. But this particular location is kind of an S curve. And there's no shoulder there, so you can't really pull over, and people sometimes drive faster on that. So I knew there was a pull-off spot just 100 meters up from there that I could safely pull off. So we did that, and the bear was between, it was past a pond. There is a pond in between us and the road. So we felt quite safe to get out on foot and to actually try to see this bear. So grabbed the bear spray. We both walked out on the road, just along the very side of it to see if we could see the bear. We couldn't anymore, but we had been looking back and it hadn't crossed the road. So I figured it went further into the meadow. So yeah, I knew there was a trail that went around the meadow and would take me onto the other side, where I could potentially get a sighting of this bear while it was in the meadow. So I asked my wife if she would like to come with me as I tried to get the photographs of the bear. She said, "Hell no, that's a bear. That's crazy." So she went back in the car, and I took my bear spray and my camera. And I actually didn't have, my cell phone was dead. But she gave me her phone saying, well, if you get into any trouble or whatever, you can use the phone to call somebody. So I said, okay. I started going down that trail, and I actually had the wind at my back. And knowing that, like, bears have an amazing sense of smell, thousands of the time it's better than ours. So many times you'll be close to a bear, but you won't even know it because they'll catch the scent of people and it'll get them moving away out of the area because they usually don't want anything to do with you. Usually they're like, people say they're more scared of you than you are of it. Some people that might not be true, but generally bears do not like to be too close to people. So
that's been my experience with every bear encounter. Yeah, it's like by the time I've even registered it, it's gone. Thing's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking the strong wind at my back, good chance this bear is going to move out of the area before I even see it. But I started walking, and sure enough, I did see it in the meadow. So I moved into position about 100 meters away from the bear, and I took some photos.
So this is still a long ways away. You're still maintaining a huge respectful distance at this point in time. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Parks recommends is not approaching a bear more than 100 meters. So yeah, I always like to maintain that. And even myself, like, if you do get close to wildlife, you can tell you're starting to affect their behavior. The best wildlife experience is one where you show up, you see the animal. That's why we have these big long lenses, is so that we can actually look like we're nice and close and kind of an intimate moment with an animal, but where you can still do it at a safe distance. So if you can just show up, have the animal doing whatever it was doing, it might take note of you, but if it continues its behavior, that is usually a sign that it's accepted you into that part of the environment. And it's, as long as it's not moving away or coming closer to investigate you, that's the best one. But and then you leave and it's still doing its behavior. So that's what I was hopeful would happen with this bear. So yeah, I started taking some photos. You could tell it caught my scent on the air. It stood up on a tree and started sniffing and was looking in my direction. They have actually very poor eyesight. Past about 30 meters, I guess they only registered as blobs. But so yeah, it's sniffed. You could tell it was now aware of my presence. And then so it got down and started walking back towards the trail. I'd gotten off the trail at this point. So so I thought it was just basically going to go out of the meadow, across the trail, and into the forest just to get away from me. So I went back to the trail, set myself up in position to hopefully get a few shots as the bear crossed the trail. And I was thinking it would move off into the woods. So sure enough, bear crosses the trail. It does go into the woods. I got a few shots, but then I noticed it comes back to the trail. And now it starts to kind of come in my direction, but it still looks like it's just doing its own regular behavior. Animals are kind of lazy like us too. If there's a path they can follow, they'll follow that rather than going through thicker forest. So it started walking down the path. So I'm still taking some photos, but I'm realizing I'm starting to zoom in or like zoom back out basically, so that like closer distance. And I'm still taking photos, and I put my camera down and I look, and now the bear is probably 50 to 40 meters away from me. So that's okay. This bear is too close now. Time to stop taking photos. So I get out my bear spray, and now I stand my ground and start waving my arms, yelling, hey bear, and just trying to scare it off. So the bear looks up at me and just kind of takes me in, and then just looks down and keeps on wandering down the path. So seems like it was just basically ambivalent. It just didn't seem to care much that I was there. So now, like, I take training, especially in wildland fire. Obviously, we're in the
Mm-hmm.
bush lots. They give us training for bear encounters, that kind of thing. Same with my schooling. So I've taken a few courses, and you always want to leave a bear out. So there may be a reason why it wants to travel in a certain direction. So if you can, it's good. All right, it looks like the animal wants to travel this way. I'm gonna get myself in a safe position that I can allow it just to go where it wants to
Mm-hmm.
go and hopefully just go past me. So it was walking on the trail towards me. So I now went into the meadow. Like I said, we burn it every year. I know this is a safe place to be. There's not much
Mm-hmm.
tripping hazards on the ground. So I go probably about 40, 50 feet into the meadow. And hopefully now the bear is going to walk across. So grab a couple more photos, put the camera down as it's walking across. But as soon as it gets to the spot that I left the trail, it sniffs the ground and it turns. So now it appears as
Whoa.
though this bear is following me. So in my mind, that's when the situation really changed. And I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this bear seems to be following me now. So I did kind of the same thing again of really trying to make myself look big, waving my arms, yelling at the bear. It's walking towards me slowly, not charging, but it does seem curious. So yeah, I'm thinking, okay, like this is a real encounter. I've had something similar before, not as close, but it didn't
Mm-hmm.
get this intense. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so the shouting, the waving my arms is not working at all. This bear just it's not being scared off. I wish I had an air horn because it's good to have a blast of an air horn too that that can
Mm-hmm.
scare them off, but I didn't have it at that point. So my shouting was the best I could do. I was thinking about should I grab a rock or a stick and throw it at this bear, but they don't train you to do that in training. That can
Mm-hmm.
potentially escalate the situation. So now, and so at this point too, the wind is perpendicular to us. So I don't have the wind at my back, which is really if you're going to spray a bear, you want to try to have the wind at your back if you can.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
definitely want to try to avoid having it blowing into you because you can get some of
For
that
sure.
spray back on you
Mm-hmm.
too. So I've sprayed spray in training, but I haven't really sprayed it in a strong wind. Like this is probably close to 30 kilometers an hour wind, and this
Oh
bear
wow.
is slowly walking towards me, not charging, but so I kind of have a debate of should I try to spray this bear? Like, should I wait until it gets close enough? But I've always been trained that when you're going to use the spray, it's going to be plant your feet. Bear is likely going to charge you. You spray a screen in front of you. It runs through that. Hopefully that deters it. If it doesn't, then when it gets closer, you continue spraying right in its face. So this
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a charging situation. So I, at that point, made a decision to okay, this doesn't seem super aggressive. It's curious. So I'm going to switch tactics. I'm going to start talking in more of a calm voice to try to not escalate the situation. And I'm going to just try to leave this bear out and walk slowly back to my car, not turning my back on the bear and not running because that can
Mm-hmm.
excite an animal and cause a predatory response, but just letting it know that, hey, I'm here. I'm not a threat, but I'm also not scared of you. So kind of you keep your distance. I'm okay
Yeah,
here.
did you feel it was aggressive or curious or both or not sure?
Yeah, so at this point, it felt more curious, and even I would say
Okay.
almost a little bit timid. So
Mm.
I wasn't
But
shooting
it's
the
still
video.
coming for you though. It's
It's
still
still
coming
coming
at you.
towards me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Mm-hmm.
is uncomfortable, obviously, having
Mm-hmm.
a apex predator coming towards you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so now I'm walking back. I'm about 400 meters from my car. So I'm hopeful that this bear is just going to lose interest. Yeah, so I'm now walking backwards, just saying, "Hey, bear, whoa, bear, it's okay." And it's now like it started to not directly follow me. It would take kind of a zigzag path, and then it would actually kind of like go and investigate trees. So that's why I say it wasn't super aggressive. It wasn't like a stalking really closely, or it wasn't making a lot of aggressive signs either. So it wasn't huffing or pawing at the ground or clicking its jaws or yawning, that kind of thing. So wasn't super nervous at that point that there was going to be an imminent attack. But I did have my bear spray out, pointing it at all times because bears can move extremely fast. So I'm walking backwards, and now it's probably been a couple minutes, and there's been a few times where the bear will actually go and do a bit of a run to a tree, and it climbs up a tree. So the photographer in me is like, "Oh, that'd be an amazing shot,"
Yeah.
but the I was able to override that and say, "No, Curtis, this
The
is
human being in you
the
is
human being in me
is
and the survivalist in me is nope,
yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to like this bear can move lightning quick, so keep your bear
Yeah.
spray pointed at it. But
Mm-hmm.
at this point, I realize, and I'm kind of going on in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm happy my wife's not here because she actually is she's quite nervous around bears and she's had
Mm-hmm.
kind of a negative encounter with a bear on a trail before where she wasn't trained and she didn't have bear spray. And once the bear was out of sight, they did run. Thankfully, it was out of sight, but wasn't just the best way to
Yeah.
manage a bear encounter. So I thought in my head, okay, I have Chrissy's phone. This is kind of one of her worst case scenarios. I'm going to film this to show her how to properly handle a bear encounter.
Wow.
So
That's a lot of presence of mind though to think about that. That's really interesting that you chose that.
yeah, and I think just going back to like training, if you do training and you think about it, it definitely helps you in situations like this. If you train seriously, and really think about, okay, what if something happens while I'm out photographing a bear or in wildfire? What if the worst case scenario happens? How am I going to use my training to get me through this safely? So it's nice to fall back on that training. If you don't have the training, I highly recommend, like if you're a wildlife photographer, learn about bear encounters, learn about bear behavior, that kind of thing. I had done that before, so luckily it allowed me to stay calm, because if you didn't have that, I could see how someone could get into a panic mode. But luckily I had that training and, like I said, presence of mind to take out the camera, and now I start filming. So that's about probably 5 minutes from when it actually got onto the trail, and about 3 minutes since it's been following me off of the trail. So now this is where most people have now seen this video that became viral of this bear following me. So first person view, I have my bear spray in front of the camera, and I'm just following the bear. I know I can safely film while also just mirroring the movement with my bear spray, so it didn't take anything away from my safety. So yeah, so you'll see in this video, the bear, it's following me, but kind of zigzagging. Again, looks kind of curious and timid is what I would say. It's about a 3-year-old bear, so still, I think, trying to figure out its place in the world.
I saw the video. It does look curious, but it's coming at you constantly. It is not running away. No. It is, like maybe you have a much better perspective on me and you're saying timid, but for me, the way it kept coming for you, I was like, that is unsettling. That is super unsettling, Yeah,
for sure. Like I've seen lots of bears in the bush, over 100, so I guess I'm quite comfortable with them. So to me, yeah, I wouldn't call that as aggressive, just in my experience, but for sure, like there is times where it actually would go and run up a tree, and usually that's a sign that a bear is scared. Like there's the term treeing a bear. So right. You'll see in the video when the bear does do that, I switch to a more aggressive shout, kind of like, "Hey bear, yeah, stay up there," trying to spook it, because I thought maybe at that point it realized that maybe it shouldn't follow me and that I'm a threat to it. But it would then come down and continue to follow me. So then switch back to that calm voice. And maybe that's the wrong thing. Maybe I should have been shouting the whole time, but I talked with wildlife experts and they said I handled it quite well. So yeah, it follows me. And then eventually you'll see there's a couple times where it gets quite close. It's running across, not directly at me, but across, and probably 12 feet, 10 feet away, and it runs behind a tree, kind of goes up the tree. But right at the end of the video, you'll see it runs quite close, and I would say probably like 8 feet in front of me, gets to a tree, and then once it's at the tree, it goes down, and then it really starts to follow me directly. And for me, it felt a little bit different. It was very close, and it was showing a bit of signs, like it was staring very intently, and it started to kind of curl its lips, and
so like it had enough of you at this point in time. Like it was like kind of sick of you at this point in time. Kind of
yeah, or maybe it decided, all right, let's see if this is actually a source of food or something. So yeah, at that point, I felt there was a difference of the energy and just the bear.
And you're backing up the whole time, right?
I'm backing up the whole time, just going, trying to get to my car. And so now at this point, it's okay, this bear, no, it's too close, and I'm keeping the wind at my back the whole time here. I'm adjusting for where the bear's following me.
Wow.
So it's a bit of you'll see a curve, like I'm kind of meandering a bit, but that's to just try to keep the bear directly in front of me in case I do have to deploy the spray.
That's fantastic insight, by the way, just to keep the wind at your back. I mean, that is I'm going to keep that in mind for sure.
Yeah, it's training. It's that training piece. And hopefully, like this education too, I hope that your listener, when they hear this kind of sticks in their brain if they unfortunately ever do have an encounter like this. So that was the moment where it now was probably about 8 feet and directly approaching me and looking intently and licking its lips. So that's where it felt, okay, this is time to see if the spray works. And I just gave it about a quarter of a second, just up. And just that little bit of spray I did get, and it wasn't even necessarily a direct hit. I did get definitely some on it, but I was it was to the right of me. So I tried to adjust a bit for the spray.
Mm-hmm.
So I sprayed just to the right of its face. But it's pretty amazing how strong these bear sprays are and how they can overcome quite a bit of wind if you're spraying even just to the side. But yeah, as soon as it got some of that spray in his face, it turned around immediately and ran off into the meadow and was pawing at its face. So I think in the video you'll hear about 10 or 15 seconds after that, okay, good bear, good bear. And then woo, that's just the tension audibly leaving my body. And obviously, so now I still just walked back to the car, made sure to check back. This bear didn't continue to follow me, but it deterred the bear. It did exactly what it was supposed to do, and it got me back home safe.
And what kind of bear spray was it?
That was the Saber Wild Max bear spray.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That's good stuff. I thought it was so interesting. Okay, so this bear, apex predator, I mean, we all know what a bear is. He's interested. He's sussing you out. He's, like you said, maybe getting a little too interested. It was so effective. It was enough to change its mind. It was like, nope, not worth it. It just turned around and running. And I thought that was so fascinating because you shared it on social media. And I did see many of the comments, probably from, no offense to any of my American listeners, but probably from Americans talking about, firearms, 44 Magnum, sidearms, things like that. And I'm like, I don't think it would have worked this well. I don't think, you know what I mean? Like, you could have been blasting it. I don't think it would have worked as well. What do you think about that? Like, of the firearms versus bear spray debate?
Yeah, I agree with you. If you do search it on the internet, there is quite a few sources that do say bear spray is actually more effective than firearms at that. Obviously, if you're a great shot and if you hit the bear in the right place, sure, it can stop that animal. But for me, I do prefer to not kill the animal if you don't have to.
Totally. That's exactly what I'm thinking too, because I'm looking at that. And for what was happening, your heart's probably racing. You're not 100% sure where this is going to go. This is an experience for you. Let's just put it that way.
Yep.
And it is resolved in such a peaceful manner, in so, you know what I mean? Like, it's so quickly, and I'm sure the bear is not too happy about getting that in his eyes or whatever, but I'm sure he was probably over it in 10 minutes, you know what I mean? So I just loved the way it was just like, this could have gone any number of ways, and how it went because of the bear spray, it went fine. It was just over. It's just like, okay, bye bear, and now I'm home. Now I got a story to tell, and I've got some experiences, and that bear is just digging up a stump to go find something else to eat, right? Like, it just was such a nice and simple and clean resolution to it that just didn't involve an animal needing to be shot or relocated or, an injury of yourself or anything, I don't know, for lack of a better term, violent. You know what I mean? It was really cool to see that. And I think it just reiterated that importance of bear spray as being a relatively benign way to resolve wildlife encounters.
Yeah, and I'm not a wildlife expert, but like I said, I did talk with wildlife experts after, and they did say, yeah, you did a great job. And there is some people from other agencies, our Parks Canada locally here. I can't speak too much for them, but I know that they do try to do deterrence before they'll go to lethal methods of dealing with bears. They try to get the bear conditioned so that it avoids people rather than immediately going to full force of we need to destroy this bear, as long as it hasn't had a very dangerous encounter with people. Unfortunately, if an animal gets to that, just for public safety, that is something that you have to look at, is destroying that animal. But that's one of the great things about bear spray is I'm hopeful that this encounter actually taught the bear that people are not something to follow. It's kind of a big skunk that sprays really painful stuff in my eyes. Like,
I don't know what a bear can remember or what a bear can't remember, but maybe it'll remember that. You know what I mean?
They're animals. Animals are smarter than we give them credit for, and that's the whole natural defense of a skunk is just a really bad smell that it sprays. So this is something that is actually very painful for the animal. So every living creature, like a mammal, they remember experiences like that. So I'm hopeful that this bear learned a lesson. I guess if you're okay with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about how this bear was essentially a habituated bear, very likely. This was right outside of the town site of Waskesiu.
I have one question though.
Yep.
You get back to the car and your wife goes, "So how'd it go?"
So I told her, okay, I'll be 15 minutes. It was a little bit longer, which is not uncommon for me, especially if I have a good
Yeah.
subject in front of me. So she said she was starting to get a little worried, obviously, because she knew I
Mm-hmm.
was out there, which it is. I'm taking a risk when I go out.
Mm-hmm.
That is my passion is wildlife photography.
Mm-hmm.
I have the training. I bring out the equipment that allows me to do it as safe as possible. But just like my job, there are inherent risks that when you do go out, especially if you know there's a bear there. Like I don't recommend if you don't have the training, going out
Mm-hmm.
and doing that. Like
Yeah.
I feel that I can do that quite safely as long as I'm doing everything properly. And I have done that for many years and I've never had a bad experience. So this was kind of the first really intense one that I've had. I've had some where I have pulled my bear spray out, but that luckily I was able to get out of that situation with ever having to use it. But yeah, so my wife was like, I was a little worried, like, how'd it go? I was like, oh yeah, it was good. I found the bear. And she says I was very calm when I came back. But I said, oh yeah, but it was interesting. You should look at this. So I gave her their phone, and she starts looking at the video, and she's just, oh my God, are you
Yeah.
okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Like I'm here, I'm totally fine. But yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty crazy. So she's like, that's insane. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she was just blown
And
away
she's glad
by.
she didn't come with you, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, she was like, I made the right call not coming out there.
Yeah.
But, maybe if there had been two people, that might have been enough to
Mm-hmm.
make that bear not want to fall. It's hard to say, but hiking in
Yeah.
groups is definitely always better than
Yeah.
being solo in bear country. They say like four or more is best, but even two
Yeah.
people can be safer than one. But anyway, yeah. So she said that was insane. And yeah, so I showed her that and I showed her mom. We went over to her place for supper, showed her the exact same reaction. Like, it's
Mm.
crazy. That's insane. You okay? So that's kind
Yeah.
of what got me thinking, like, hey, I should actually share this because, and they were saying too, like, this is a really good, and I told her, like, I wanted to show you this just to show you
Yeah.
how to react properly. I think lots of times you can talk
It's
about
incredibly
theoreticals.
instructional. It's an incredibly instructional video. Like it
Yeah, thank
really
you.
is. So we're going to share it through Explore as well, and it is really really fascinating to watch. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
think. For me, I'm a visual learner and
Mm-hmm.
like an actual physical learner. If I can see something being done or do it myself, that's way better than just reading the steps. So yeah, I really wanted to actually get this video out there just in as much as it could, just for people to actually learn about proper bear behavior, educate themselves, learn that it is a great idea to carry bear spray. Like I find that people seem to be quite good at it in grizzly bear country. Not everybody, obviously, but you get a higher
Mm-hmm.
proportion of people in grizzly bear
Yeah.
country. But in
Mm-hmm.
black bear country, it's much less. Like most people here in Saskatchewan, I find don't carry bear spray or don't even know
Mm-hmm.
that they should. I was the same way growing up. It wasn't until I moved to the mountains that I really decided, hey, I need to get bear spray. And then I brought it over here because you'll encounter more black bears than grizzlies. Like
Yeah.
it's a high population.
It's true. Yeah, I live in Vancouver. I hike in North Vancouver, so black bear territory, big time.
Hmm.
I was just hiking yesterday, and came by fresh scat all over the place,
Yep.
and like very on these trails, like very few people carry it, to be honest.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
interesting. You said you'd never had a bad experience. Would you classify this as a bad experience, or how do you classify it in your head?
I would classify it as like for me, it's not a bad experience as in
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
scarred me or I'm not going to go into the woods or anything. It was an unfortunate experience in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
that's not how a bear should behave. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where going to the habituated piece.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so this was right outside the Waskesiu town site, which is quite busy in the summer. We
Mm-hmm.
have thousands of people coming and spending their vacations here. Lots of people from the city that they just don't know a whole lot about the wilderness. So it's very important when you're out here, especially in well anywhere in the forest, but national parks especially, just to try to keep it as pristine as possible. Of never feeding wildlife, always cleaning up after yourself, not leaving garbage, especially around campsites or places where there are people where that can attract bears. And basically, if that happens, and there is going to be a certain level that of kind of non-compliance that is going to happen. You hope that nobody's intentionally feeding a bear, but even just that leaving out your garbage and not having it properly secured, or even, hey, we're at a campsite and we have our beverage cans and our garbage. We're going to be back in 5 minutes. We're just going to leave it out. We don't need to pack away everything. Like that's where bears can get into get really high value food rewards, and it starts to override their fear of people, just because they're always looking for high caloric sources, and human food is like that. So this bear specifically, I believe it is the same individual. There is actually a photo sent to my wife. She golfs quite a bit, and somebody was on the golf course of this bear. This specific individual was at the snack shack at the golf course, and it was up on its hind legs, up on the deck, and licking up the condiments where people dress their hot dogs. And there's plexiglass of the worker in front of the where the bear was, but it snapped a photo of like 2 feet away from this bear.
Wow.
And plexiglass of it just licking. So obviously this bear had lost its fear of people, right? And especially from what I've heard of other people that have had experiences similar to this, it usually is that young bear that they are kind of curious, 2 to 3 years old. They may have just gotten kicked off by the mother, so they're now on their own. They're trying to find ways to get sources of food on their own. So that tends to be times where I think there can be closer encounters with people. And I hope, and I'm not sure if there's been any studies in this, but it's kind of like a teenager or a kid that they're able to maybe learn a little bit better too. Then, so hopefully if they have an experience like this, an habituated bear hopefully becomes conditioned to fear people again. I know some people say that's very tough to do, but with that bear specifically, obviously it really didn't like that spray. And then later on that week, while I was working, I actually sighted the bear again near that same area. So I called our resource conservation officer that deals in wildlife management and said, hey, that bear that I had that negative encounter with is in this meadow. And lots of times there'll be target bears that they're doing some management actions on. And what they did was they came out with a paintball gun, and they're doing that as a non-lethal hazing. So
interesting.
The bear sees people, and then they'll hit it with a paintball gun that does 2 things: paintball or chalk balls. It marks that bear so they can see which bear it actually is. Plus, it gives it that similar negative reinforcement, same as the bear spray, where if it sees somebody, it doesn't want to get sprayed, it doesn't want to get hit by a paintball or chalk ball, so it's going to move out of the area rather than following people and thinking that people are a source of food, which is what I believe and other people believe was the case with this bear after it had been deconditioned and it was starting to get human food rewards. And I hope that no one intentionally fed the bear from a car. Unfortunately, that can happen too. So it's just really important for all of our visitors of national parks, and even just not parks, but anywhere in the wilderness, to just keep animals wild and not feed them, and try to not get them comfortable with our presence is the goal.
For sure. That's interesting with the paintball and chalkball. It's like an anti-habituation, right? Like it's like the cure to that, which is interesting because when you were talking about the bear encounter earlier, and you said, he saw you as a source of food, my mind went to, that bear wants to eat you. But of course, that's not really it. Like, he's seeing you as you drop hot dogs, you throw granola bars at me, you leave sandwich wrappers lying around. That's probably a more likely source of food that the bear saw you as, right?
Yes, for sure. And going back to when I said my wife had a negative encounter, it was actually her and a friend out on a hiking trail, and they were having a little snack. And so they were on a bench, and they just had their food set on the bench, which is totally okay. And all of a sudden this bear comes out of the woods. So they both stood up and kind of took some steps back, and they had forgotten their pepperoni sticks on the bench. So that was not even them intentionally trying to feed the bear, tossing the bear food to try to distract it. It was just it was their instincts to get up and try to get out of that area. So that bear then saw them, but then went and got the pepperoni sticks, and that was actually when it got the food. That's when they were out of sight and they started running. So it did distract the bear and maybe allowed them to get away, but it's not what you want to happen, because in that
accidental habituation, right?
Exactly. So in that scenario, and I had people on the internet say, you should have just thrown. They said thrown whatever you had. I didn't have any attractants on me, but I mean, I smell like a person. Bears have an amazing smell, so they can start to associate that person smell with maybe a food reward. If somebody, like happened in my wife's scenario, or if, say, even I heard, and I think it was potentially this bear too, had actually gotten to somebody's golf cart on that golf course, where obviously you might have a snack or a drink in that golf cart and you're out of the cart.
I saw some of the comments too about throwing some food. It's like, So you're going to teach a bear that if it chases a human, the human throws food at it? Like, that's a terrible idea. That is an absolutely terrible idea, right?
Much better to have bear spray. Much better to have bear spray. And an air horn if you can get an air horn too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, air horns. I've never actually deployed an air horn at a bear, but I've carried them before, and I always think like they got to be pretty effective, eh? Like, that bear's not going to want to be anywhere near that, just blasting that air horn.
In the animal kingdom, animals roar to establish kind of dominance. So that's a very loud sound. So I think, they're usually loud sounds spook us. It's just a natural thing. These spook things. So I wish I had had my air horn. I normally do carry it. I didn't have it at that point. But that would be my first thing. Like back before I started filming any of that, where that part where I realized, okay, this bear is coming in my direction. I want it to know that I'm here and that it should go somewhere else. Where I started to make myself look big and was yelling, I would then use the air horn instead of that, which would be, I think, even more effective than the human voice.
And so that's a great learning. What else did you learn from this experience?
I learned that it was the reinforcement. It was positive reinforcement for me that I should always carry my bear spray. There'll be times where maybe I was a little bit more lax in the past, or I forgot it at home, and actually just was recently diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm quite forgetful. But this has made it into anytime I'm intentionally going into the bush to photograph bears, or if I'm going on a hike or going on a trail run, I bring my bear spray. So I have made me think, okay, and it's not enough just to have your bear spray, it's have it as easy access. So I'm sure people, if they know about bear spray, they say don't have it just inside your bag, have it on your persons where you can easily access it. So for me it was like bear spray works was a thing. So like I said, that Sabre Wild Max bear spray, it's I guess the strongest you can get on the market here in Canada, and it's also the furthest distance, and they do really stringent testing. So I think had different brands before, but I'm definitely only going with that one now just because
it works
very well for me.
No question there.
So, the other ones are probably good too, but I do know it's a really well-known brand and it works very well. So I do work with Sabre now promoting their product because it's a great product. I used to not like the term influencer. Maybe it was a bit of jealousy or something that people were making money, but I thought it didn't really matter. But I think so. I'm technically an influencer with them, but it's good because I think influencing should be like a positive influencer. So influence, like promoting things and products that you believe are actually good. I think that this is a very good product that will make people safer, and it can make us kind of live together with bears in a safer manner if everybody is educated and carries bear spray. So something that I'm proud to promote, proud to work with them. And then it also taught me that training really works. So getting yourself educated, understanding signs of what's an aggressive bear, what's a curious bear, when is like how to actually deploy the spray, when to use it, how to properly use it, that kind of thing. So I would say those are my main takeaways from it. And it's like I said, it was over 1 in 100 of experiencing and seeing bears in the wilderness. So not a common thing, but that's the thing with training is you got to train for the uncommon, and that's really where you have to put the majority of your training into. If it was just bears always went away from people, there wouldn't be any issues. It's just on that weird, whatever chance there are human bear encounters, it's a fraction of a percent of the actual amount of encounters of people and bears. But for the ones that do happen, you want to be prepared for that. And it really taught me the importance of that.
I love how you're saying that, having that bear spray on you allows you to coexist in a better way. I mean, you can go out, you can enjoy the outdoors, you can enjoy the wilderness, you can know that if something goes a little sideways like that, you have an encounter that's not great, you can ideally resolve it pretty easily, without escalating it beyond anything that it needs to be escalated for. And then people listening to this podcast, such a great takeaway that don't be afraid of taking it. I know some people can be intimidated by it, they don't want to go off in their face or something like that. Learn how to use it. Sabre actually has practice canisters that are fantastic. Right. I couldn't recommend that enough. We did some testing of that here at Explore, these practice canisters, so you learn how it feels, what it feels like when it goes off, what it does, what it looks like when it goes out. It will change your perspective on it. You'll be so much more comfortable with it, and then you just have it there, and now you can go out. I ran into, like I said, just yesterday, I was hiking in North Vancouver, and there was some fresh scat on the trail, and I ran into a woman, and she was very nervous. She was like, should I keep going? What's going on? Like, are there bears around here? And I was talking to her. I was like, there are. Yes, there are. I'm not going to tell you there are not bears here, right? But it's that sense. She would probably felt a lot more comfortable and been able to enjoy her hike a lot more had she had bear spray and training on how to use it.
For sure. Yeah, no, it definitely it eases that level of anxiety, I think, for a lot of people. And like you said, it is very important to practice before. So if you do have, like, bear spray does have an expiry date, so I don't
Hmm.
recommend just throwing out those cans. If you go out and you're very careful of where the wind direction is, making sure you're not going to get blowback, you can
Hmm.
actually go into an area where it's safe. We have a gravel pit outside of the park
Oh,
here
that's a great
where,
idea. Yeah, with the
yeah,
stuff
it's
that's
a
about to
perfect
expire,
place.
you mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
and you can actually
Hmm.
use that for training too. But if this is your
Hmm.
first can, I do definitely recommend of getting one of those inert cans. I think Sabre
Hmm.
actually does, where you can buy a combo where it's a little bit cheaper and you get both an inert
Right.
can and the bear spray can, so you can train with that one first. And I think it's about the smaller canister. It's about 8 seconds of spray. As you see,
Hmm.
like, it was only a quarter of a second of spray that was
Hmm.
effective for me.
Hmm.
So you don't need to do that full 8 seconds. So one training can be used for numerous people too, just to get that
Hmm.
idea of how to aim with it, how far it sprays, that kind of thing. And with that inert too, like, I still don't recommend having spraying upwind, but go sideways, see how far the drift
Hmm.
is, that kind of thing. Where if you
Hmm.
do have to deploy it in a non-optimal position sideways, you can maybe account a little bit for, okay, I saw how much it actually drifts. So you can
Hmm.
just be a bit more effective. So yeah, no, those are all very good tips, and something I
Great
can't
advice.
recommend enough.
When you shared this on social media, what was the response?
Yeah, so when I shared it on Reddit, which is kind of my
Hmm.
number one
Okay. Yeah.
time waster. And yeah, so originally on that, I was thinking, what subreddit should I put that on? And there's a subreddit. So people don't know, subreddits are just essentially like little forums within Reddit
Hmm.
itself. So for certain interests, like, there'd be a photography subreddit, there'd be a sports team subreddit. This one, there's a subreddit just called That's Insane. And that's for any photos, stories,
Yeah.
videos, anything that makes you say that's insane. And that's what people were saying when they saw this video. So I posted it to that. I've
Hmm.
had some traction with some of my photos before on Reddit, and yeah, I went to bed and it said it was trending, so that was cool. It was like top trending post on the subreddit. I wake up in the morning and I do what most people do, look at their phones kind of first thing in the morning,
Hmm.
and the notification with the turned off airplane mode was like, your post is the top post, and I was like, that's crazy. This is a subreddit 2 million people. It's like top post on that, but then I looked again and it was like, no, it's not top post on that subreddit. It's top post of all of Reddit. So my
Holy
post
cow.
was the most popular post on all of Reddit for like that 24-hour period. So that's where the virality really started. It got, I
So how
think,
many views would that be? That must be a staggering amount.
it was 8 million views. I don't know how they calculate the views on Reddit, whether that's like the
Wow.
times it's been watched or just how many people's front pages it went across. But
Okay.
yeah,
Still,
eight million views in the first
I mean,
12
even if
hours.
1/10 of that many people actually watched it,
Yeah.
that's still a lot of
Yeah.
people. So,
So at that point, it was just like a whoa, like
yeah,
this is going to be an experience. And
yeah,
at that point, I knew, I was like, I'm going to get the best of the internet, and I'm going to get the worst of the internet.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is definitely how it played out. Everything from people saying like, thank you so much for sharing this. This was hugely educational. I'm going to go out and buy bear spray right now, to people that, like, essentially were kind of giving me death threats of saying, next time that happens, I hope that bear spray doesn't work, and that kind of thing.
Yikes.
And there's some of that, it's just kind of uncalled for. And I think some people just
Yeah.
like to agitate. And there's also people saying all the things I did wrong and all that. And fair enough, for sure. Like,
Hmm.
critique that. Like, I agree. And even I should have put it, actually, now looking back, what I had no idea it would get that big, but I should have actually put a little disclaimer right at the start and said what I had done prior to the video, because
Mm,
a lot of people's gripes are like, you didn't make yourself look big, you didn't show, you didn't try to scare off this bear.
mm,
And the fact
hmm.
is that I did do that. I did take the training, but this bear was so habituated. There is sometimes bears that does not work. There's people
Hmm.
saying that I should have ran at and charged this bear, and like, they don't teach you that in training. Like, yes, that can work. I've seen it work, but that can also escalate a situation. So
Yeah.
you don't know if that's going to be the right thing. So, anyways, it was good. It fostered a lot of conversation about it, and I think it was
Hmm.
just quite compelling footage. And I think the fact that it was kind of first person view, it allowed people to almost put themselves in the situation. But yeah, and then to the negative people, I lots of times I actually would send them a message. I would private message them and say, hey, like, I see your message here, like, that's, I quite hurtful. And some people, it was coming from the point of like, I was hurting the bear. And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks like I'm causing that bear pain. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact is that that is actually the best thing that could happen to the bear in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
so that it doesn't have to
Anti-habituation,
be
like we said, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
so that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be destroyed later. So there is quite a few people actually that it was really good to see. Like I find in our kind of society right now, actually having differing views and not getting super personal and actually being able to have a discussion with somebody that has a differing view, and to, if you think that they are wrong, don't call them an idiot and say like,
Mm-hmm.
don't approach it from that way. Say it from like, hey, I saw this, like I see what you saw, it was hurtful for these reasons. I think that like you might not know why I had to do that or why it's
Mm-hmm.
the proper thing. So I actually had a number of people that were quite strongly worded that like they that I should never be allowed in the forest, that yeah, I should be like I should
Mm-hmm.
get hurt next time. They actually fully said, I really apologize. I didn't know that. I didn't know that bear
Well, they
spray was a
probably were
good
very
thing.
shocked that you actually reached out to them, right? And were like, "Whoa, I
Yeah,
thought it was just
exactly.
anonymous, right?" So
Yeah,
good for
yeah.
you. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that more people
Mm-hmm.
should do that rather than, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess there's a couple of them, they were just really ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't publicly shame them. I posted as a story on my Instagram of some of these messages that people were sending me that like, obviously
Mm-hmm.
the message, they didn't want that to be shown out, but it was just absolutely off base. And what I did
Mm-hmm.
is I blacked out their names. I put a clown emoji over their
Yeah,
profile
yeah.
picture, so nobody knew who it was. But
Yeah.
just showing people like, hey, this is pretty unreasonable. Like, and then have
Yeah,
like,
that's too bad.
yeah, and then so that person would probably see like, oh, like this person then showed it to the rest of people, like, and then other people's reaction to it was just like, hey, that's insane. Like that's totally ridiculous. Like I hope if somebody is completely ridiculous, I think a little bit of that is okay, just to show them
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you shouldn't do that to people.
Yeah.
But the other people that I could tell were like worried about the bear welfare. Those are the people I really, and the other people I tried to reach out, and some
Mm-hmm.
people were just, nah, screw you. Like they didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
change their mind. There's going to be a certain percentage of people that have that, but
You get 8 million views on something. If a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of those people
yeah,
are out to lunch, that's
yeah,
thousands of people.
yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
some of those were the most rewarding interactions, were
Mm-hmm.
the ones that someone had a negative view and where I could provide some education of actually why this is the best thing to do for myself and the bear in this situation. And I didn't want to have to use it. Like, it wasn't the first thing I did. Hindsight's 2020. Looking back, there was points in that video where the bear was close enough that I could have sprayed it. And now I probably would spray it a little bit earlier. Like some people were like, oh, he
Mm-hmm.
was just trying to get views. He should have sprayed it way earlier. He was baiting the bear, telling it to come.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing that, but fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take me at my word. Some people would say I had no idea. I wasn't trying to get views, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was always hopeful that my first thing to go viral would be an amazing photo rather than a shaky
Mm-hmm.
cell phone video. But it has gotten me exposure for my photography,
Mm-hmm.
and I view it as a positive. So sure, there is some personal gains for it for me, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I think there's so much so people can take from this. I think it's
Yeah,
such
I
an
appreciate
interesting
that.
experience.
That's why I really like talking about it too. Like going on a show
Yeah.
like this, or the it kind of blew up with like I was on national news talking with
Mm-hmm.
news anchors and stuff, like lots of talk radio. Like I honestly, I don't really like public speaking. I'm starting to get more comfortable with it, but I think this is an important story to share, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
passionate about it. Like for me, I can easily blab about things I'm interested in, no problem, to strangers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good, honestly, that this experience happened to me and not a hiker on the trail or a biker or
Mm-hmm.
somebody that didn't have bear spray. Wasn't, who
Mm-hmm.
knows what it would have been if that bear had actually gotten a lot closer, if there would have been even a more negative counter. Like I think it was, as far as a negative situation, it was the best that it could have been, just with
Mm-hmm.
my training and what happened. So
For anyone who thinks, oh, he sprayed the poor bear with bear spray and he hurt the bear and all that stuff,
mhm.
it's like, no. Who hurt the bear was the people that habituated. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like that. Like so, if you leave a half-eaten sandwich in the middle of a field and walk away from it, you are hurting a bear. That's what you are doing. That right? Like you're the one setting that situation up. So yeah,
Those are the people that deserve the wrath of the internet, is the people that
yeah, yeah,
knowingly, like once
yeah.
they're educated, they still knowingly
Mm-hmm.
will either feed an animal, or like
Mm-hmm.
that's a terrible thing. I think is a huge issue in wildlife photography. I think there is a certain proportion, and I'm definitely not all of them, but there's some people that may say and they may promote things, but I think there is a number of people that will like use bait or that kind of thing to
Yeah, that's
get
no
a
good.
closer animal shot, which that's not wildlife anymore. You're
No.
affecting that animal. Like that's not a proper way to do it. That's one of the worst things you can do for an animal is to get it habituated around people, especially an
Mm-hmm.
animal that can be dangerous to people.
All the signs, you probably have them in Prince Albert too, but I know in the North Shore and around Vancouver, a fed bear is a dead bear. That's what they say all the
Exactly.
time, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
we're quite lucky. Our wildlife management in the park, like I said, I'm not a wildlife management officer, but just a little bit
Mm-hmm.
that I do know about them. They do try to do the hazing, that kind
Yeah,
of thing
that's
before
awesome.
they
I love
move.
that. That's
They
so
do,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
they will actually like they take tranquilizer courses. They do a ton of training and put a lot of
Wow.
resources into trying to live like harmoniously with animals in our park here. They
Mm-hmm.
understand like this is their home. We're in it. If we can try to do things to avoid destroying a bear because of what people have done, they want to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of resources that go into like they'll tranquilize the bear, they'll tag it, and they'll actually relocate it to an area far away from the town site so that hopefully this bear can have its best chance of not having to be destroyed. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it comes back in and continues to go through campsites, or we've had bears that have torn through tents before, like
Mm-hmm.
there's just things that can't be happening. And that's where we as people need to be a lot more responsible in making sure we don't have our attractants in our tents. We're securely storing things. We need people educating people on why. And people like, if they see something like that happening, don't be mean about it, but just try to educate people. Like if somebody says, hey, screw you, this is my campsite, whatever. But some people
Mm-hmm.
may not know that they should put away. Just say, hey, this is
Mm-hmm.
bears around here. So if you see somebody leaving the campsite messy or that kind of thing, like just try to educate people. Or if you see someone on the trail where there's bears and you have bear spray, you can say, you want to have a chat, just like, hey, notice you guys don't have bear spray. Like there's bears in this area. I'd recommend you guys picking up some bear spray. Look at this video here and see what can happen
Mm-hmm.
and see how effective it is.
Next time I'm hiking the North Shore and someone asks me about bears, I'm gonna pitch some bear spray. I'm gonna say, you
Yeah.
know what, Sabre.
Well,
Go
and
to
commonly,
Canadian
like
Tire and
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's nice. It's nice to have conversations with people on the
Mm-hmm.
trails. Like I always like to, if I see somebody hiking, I like to make small talk and chat. And those are opportunities for education. If you notice they don't have bear spray, you do. You don't have to force it on them, but just
Mm-hmm.
say like, hey, have you ever encountered bears out here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do if you encounter a bear? Like I would just travel to New Zealand with my wife. On our honeymoon over the winter, their summer, and yeah, it was wild. People in New Zealand had seen this video. They don't have bears there,
Oh
but it's a
yeah,
very, very common thing that when they hear we're from Canada and you're hiking, you're talking about hiking, they start talking about bears. So that's when I
yeah.
said like, hey, did you end up seeing this video? And the majority of people have. Like it's really
That's
viral, and
wild.
it's good that we can use this virality to try to educate people. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's so great.
mhm.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time today to go through this and explain what you learned and what what you took from it and how people can learn from that. If anyone were to want to see some of your wildlife photography or learn more about you, how could we do that?
Yeah, for sure. My Instagram is Matwish photo, CMATWISH photo. So that's where I post. Well, I'm pretty bad at posting regularly, especially in the summers with wildfire season. I tend
Got more
to
important things to do, so
get
I
quite
get
busy, but
that.
yeah, like I said, I found out I have ADHD recently, so hopefully I'm going to be able to figure out some tools that allow me to stick to a routine better. I have tons of images that I love to share. I
hmm
just lots of times I get distracted and don't have the workflow, but I hope to get more active on that. I do share stories of when I'm out hiking, seeing wildlife, some of my wildfire stuff on that. I have a Facebook group, Curtis Matwishyn Photography, and I'm hopeful to have a website up and running here soon, potentially even start going with a blog as well. Very passionate about the outdoors, starting to get into some video making. So yeah, my main part would be Instagram. And then once I get a website up, that'll be linked to that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll post links to your social feeds on the Explore page when I get this podcast live.
Thank
But
you.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
so fun talking to you. So interesting. Really great conversation. So I do appreciate your time and thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, for having me. Appreciate it. And maybe we'll talk again sometime. Let me know next time you're in Wathkasoo and we'll go out and shoot some photos.
I definitely will. Thank you. I have a confession to make. Did you hear in the podcast where I made several references to having gone hiking the day before in black bear country? Yeah, guess what I didn't have on me? I'm not going to cop to it. I'll leave it to your imagination. That's changing today, and I hope it changes for all of you. It is such a simple thing to learn how to use, to carry with you, and to avoid unnecessary escalation of wildlife encounters, whether they be bears, cougars, wolves, coyotes. We recommend you check out all the products from Sabre Security Corp. Go to sabered.com. Check out Outdoor Safety and click on Canadian Bear Spray. That's where you'll find out the different products they have, different information, where to find it. We are big fans of the Frontiersman Extra. I know Curtis used the Wild Max. Definitely try out one of those inert canisters, but more than anything, just continue to get educated and don't be afraid. It's a big wild world and we can share it with bears. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm David Webb, and hey, live the adventure.